everybody. My name is Austin Creswell, and I will be moderating our conversation today. I'm here with the two of the founders of Let's Take a Seat at the Table, otherwise known as LTST, Gionna Scott and Annjeanette Martin. And we are here with one of our mayoral candidates for Gainesville, Texas, Mr. Tommy Moore. Thank you all for tuning in today, and we hope that you enjoy this conversation. We are hoping today that we'll have a lot of conversation between the four of us about where Gainesville's at and where Gainesville's going, in the hopes that the mayoral candidate will bring to the office if elected. So we'll just dive right in. Mr. Moore, why are you running for the mayor of Gainesville?
Well, I was born and raised here, as many of you know. I've lived my entire life here, with the exception of about 4 years while I was in the military. This city has just always been my home. I love living here. I love being part of this community. I love raising my daughters here. It's just a passion for me to be part of this city. I know that in my work, I travel around the United States quite a bit. And I've been to every state except one, that's Idaho. And I meet great people. But when I always come home, there's just something unique and special about Gainesville, Texas, and it's our people. It's a place that I want to help build and support and bring, lives together.
Are there any particular life experiences that made you decide to run for mayor? Obviously, you have a large passion for the city, but was there a particular instance that you were like, this is the thing, this is what I need to do?
Well, it's interesting you asked that, Austin, because in my whole entire life, I've always been proud of being here and always proud of being from here, especially when people come here from out of town and they see the people that live here in their hearts and their giving and the opportunities that are here. I'm just proud of that. And as I've gotten involved with school board and gotten involved with the city council and other organizations in town, you just start to see the heart of everybody that lives here. They genuinely care about this community. They genuinely care about each other. And I've grown into a position where I feel like I want to lead now. I've always kind of been behind the scenes kind of person. Not because I don't, I just don't want the glory, The people that do the work are the ones that get the pat on the back. And if I can somehow unify that and bring that to our community and make that, a goal of ours, well, let's do it. Let's do it together, though. Because I've grown in my leadership. The way I lead it is we're a team. And I'm going to work as hard as you're going to work. And I don't ask anybody to do anything I wouldn't do. And so I just feel like this is my time to give back to this community and love everybody and share in my work ethic too. Yeah. It's ingrained in my soul, to have a hard work ethic. Okay. And I don't look for payment or what's in it for me. I look at what's the positive outcome for our community. And that's genuinely my goal in life.
So that's awesome. Now, Annjeanette, Gionna, y'all are also both from Gainesville, correct?
Mm-hmm, correct. Yes, born and raised.
Born and raised in Gainesville.
Right,
I'm also born and raised.
yes.
Do y'all want to share your stories about being from Gainesville?
I wasn't really active in the community until I created LTST, and I feel like from then on, I realized how many different community organizations we have. I just wasn't aware. And I feel like once you're made aware of the things that Gainesville offers, you become proud. You're like, wow, I'm from a town that has this, and that to give back to the community.
Yeah. Makes that passion.
Yeah. So now I'm like, what can I do to help in the community?
My experiences as born and raised in Gainesville, graduated from high school here. I moved about 10 years ago, but just live about 40 miles south. But this is home. These are my roots. My entire life have not even lived 40 miles away from here. If I've always been in a very close driving range, a close proximity here. And so I've been able, even being somewhat of an outsider now, living out of the community, I still come back and I've seen how things have grown, and I see how what things are coming, what things have come to order, and how things are changing. Also see some of the things that we could possibly work on, some of the things, because after you don't realize what you could be doing or you're missing out until you see it somewhere else. It was exciting to see that Gionna was starting up LTST, and I thought that I could, bring some of that to this community and to this organization.
I understand that. I mean, I left, went to college 9 hours away, experienced more of the world, then came back, and it's been, never thought I'd be back, but it's been a really refreshing thing to be a part of things like LTST, to be, working back in the theater that I grew up doing shows in. Like, it's this weird full circle moment that's really cool. And the through line that I see in all 4 of our stories is we've done that. We've experienced more of the world. We've come back. We're here. We're planting roots. We're choosing to, move forward with our passion in the community and opening up our world to see what does our community have to offer. And, Tommy, you had said that you traveled
Abroad,
extensively.
Right.
What are some things that you have that you brought from experiences outside of Gainesville that you think that you can bring into the mayoral office here?
Well, I'm a person that I look right here. I look at a person's heart.
Yeah.
That's where I start. Anytime I talk to an individual, you can glean so much from a person by just listening. There's a reason why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. And in my travels, everywhere I've gone, I found great people everywhere. And I'm talking in every aspect of life. I'm just sitting here listening to you 3 talk about Gainesville, and it just makes me sit up straighter and attend to things. Because like you, Gionna, sincerely, this format is something that you saw needed to be brought to fruition, and you worked and made it happen. I mean, you should be proud of that.
Thank you.
And Austin and Missy, y'all worked so hard to help her be successful. And then Annjeanette comes back and contributes, from out of town. I mean, that's huge too. The things that I've got from my travels are the sense of pride of community and the love of people. Because you can walk in any place that, of people, they're just, when you get raw with a person, you find out exactly who they are. Yeah. And to me, that's more important than what, denomination are you? Let's just get raw with a person.
Yeah.
Find out who they are. Find out what makes them who they are. And I don't know, embrace each other for the things that are different.
That connection helps to bring people together.
Absolutely.
And it helps to figure out what's the best needs for all people.
Absolutely. And so that's probably the greatest gift I've gotten from my travels, is to appreciate what we have here and to also appreciate people.
And to really, hone that sense of empathy for other people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's definitely what I find, is being out in the world, having those conversations, having the conversations like LTST has created for Gainesville, is bringing more empathy and more awareness to different perspectives. So in your opinion, and this can go to any 4 of us really, what do you think qualifies a person to be mayor?
As I've talked today, I've had 30 years of experience in this community. The first 10 years, I just spent educating myself. I went to NCTC. I'm a graduate from there. I got involved with a church and taught Sunday school. I got to know people, passionate about kids. So, that was a huge influence in our home, having kids over all the time, always having someone, visiting from other homes. And then when it came time to pass a new school bond, I got involved in the community to help raise money to bring awareness. Now, that was my first time in the community, to get outside and really talk to people about, raising funds. I found it to be very difficult. I walk in and go, "Who are you?" And I got really excited and was nominated chairman of that. So that was my first experience with that. And it got me really interested in school board. So then I ran for school board and I lost my first election. And the guy that beat me by 16 votes, I think. He's actually a really good friend of mine. And then I ran again the next year and I won. And I got involved on the school board, and I just absorbed myself in learning. I read everything I could get my hands on. I was truly involved and submersed myself into learning what education was and what it needed and what my role was as a school board member. And I took that very seriously. And after 8 years of service, I saw it was time for me to step down. I mean, you can't stay there forever, and you shouldn't. It was really time for me to change. I got more involved on a personal program, the Medal of Honor Host City program, which they don't do endorsements for political candidates. So anything I say about them, I just want to be clear. This is just my experience with them. They're not endorsing me. So I just became a volunteer in that organization. And it was a very positive organization for our community. In fact, I would say that it's probably one of the shining stars of our community. I mean, just it exhibits everything that we as Gainesville, citizens share together in hospitality and love for our country. After a few years, I was asked to be on the board, so I came on the board, and the following year, I was elected as the president, and I've ran that program for the last 4 years, and I'm very proud of the work I've done. Just a couple of accomplishments I'd like to share with you is that one of the things that we did, and it was talked about before I came along, but we fully funded a scholarship at the college that will last in perpetuity from now on from that program.
That's awesome.
So we took our talk about education and outreach to children and youth, and we put our money where our mouth was. And so now there's a scholarship out there that's awarded every year on behalf of that program. We didn't have a budget when we started. We just wrote checks. So I helped stand up a budget, and we operate now on a budget that we are fiscally responsible with the dollars that people trust us with in our organization. And then lastly, we adopted a logo. I know that sounds a little silly, but we've always had a logo, but we adopted one that we could trademark.
Yeah.
And it was really kind of fun to do, and we had to go through all the loopholes to get it approved and developed and all that. So those are 3 things I was really proud of that. And then, of course, my city council. I've been on city council now 5 years.
Yes.
Again, another love of mine is this city, the people that live here. And I'm truly a person that listens. I mean, I don't give lip service to people. If you come to me with a concern, I'm going to follow it through, and I'm going to listen to what you have to say. And I think that's led me to being successful in life, not just in any of the organizations that I've been involved with. The council, I was flattered. I did not solicit for this. I was flattered that I was nominated to be the mayor pro tem, and that people would entrust me with that position. So because of my community involvement over the last 20 years, because I've lived here for my entire life, with the exception of the 4 that I was in the military, I have a love of this city. I have the time to devote to this job, and I'm out in the community now every day.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking to people, not to solve problems all the time. We're just visiting. We have relationships that we want to foster.
So honing in on some of those things, it would be it's easy to say, oh well, a mayor needs to be a leader. Right. That and encompass it in that, but there's a certain amount of things that I'm hearing you say about love for the city that you're trying to lead, time to devote to the office, right. Listening, which is
major.
I mean, is listening, and a presence within the community, a presence to be available to listen.
Right.
Annjeanette, Gionna, do y'all have anything to add as to what you would like to see in a mayor? Or qualifications.
Well, he said it, the whole listening thing. I think that's key. Like, you can only do so much, but if someone's just not listening to you, there's not going to get much that you're going to be able to get accomplished.
Listening, not just hearing.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
that's a good point. Yeah.
Yes. So that's a big thing. Those are those 2 things that I separate, is just because you can get a lot of I hear you, but someone that actually listens and takes it in, maybe even, I know you can't. I can't say I want a new park and you just, okay, make it happen with everything. But just if there are a certain level of, or a certain amount of, suggestions or whatever, I think that listening comes into play on, listening and putting to effect if needed.
So what are your top 3 priorities to tackle if you are elected?
Wow, that's
If you had to narrow it down to
Yeah.
3 top priorities.
in the role of mayor, I see it as all encompassing. This is not, in my view, you can't walk in with a singular view of what you are going to do and how you're going to achieve it. Because in a leadership role, you can come in and fix something, but destroy a lot of other things. You have to be fully aware of what your responsibilities are as a leader. I mean, I just feel that strongly. I'm a very compassionate person. I have a lot of empathy. I'll start here. I would say the healing of our citizens is one area I really want to focus on. I mean, I've there's not a place that I go in town that I can't that I don't see somebody that I know and just I love on them, and I have a million stories. There are ways that I can reach out to someone and touch their lives because they've touched mine. I'm happy to share those on an individual basis, but I can't explain it. I would say the second thing we need to work on is our infrastructure.
Okay.
And I know that's a very, some people say, well, that's easy. We just had a new plan, delivered at council to about a month ago. And we have a $350 million worth of infrastructure needs in this community.
Yeah.
When you're looking at a $42.5 million budget, when we were faced with that accumulation of work that needs to be done in this community, because there was about 50 years here that we didn't do any measurable improvements in the city. Now, I'm not saying we didn't spend money, and I'm not saying we didn't fix things, and I'm not saying that we didn't address concerns but there wasn't a unified purpose in moving towards something to say that we did. So like the last 10 years, what we've done, we passed a bond. We started with Broadway, and we finished Culbertson Street. We've updated some of our sewage treatment plants. We've updated things like our fire station. And the reason we had to do the fire station is because the implements are getting so big we can't fit them in the 100-year-old building that we have. So, and those are just a few examples. Yeah. So probably the second thing I would be working on is how are we going to get to the next level, because we want to leave this place better than we found it.
Yes.
We need to do that. And that doesn't just mean the surface of the street. There's water, there's sewer. I mean, I know that when they were working on Elm Creek, they were finding wooden pipes in the ground.
Yeah.
I didn't even know we had wooden pipes. I mean, I thought it was a hollow tree. I don't know. But anyway, and number 3, I just think I want to bring industry here. I really want to work with, I want to diversify the industries that we have here. I mean, like, if you look at the growth of our city over 150 years, the cattle industry was what really put us on the map. And then in the 50s and 60s, it was oil and gas. And those industries have been really good to us. We can't complain about either one of those. But, as we enter or fully into the 21st century, we got to start looking at what's next. Do we need to bring some technology companies here? Do we need to bring, some companies that do shipping? I don't know. But I want to work with our Economic Development Corporation to identify those and bring some industry here that makes our community not so reliant on one industry so that we don't fail, as a city. I've looked at our taxable values over the last 13 years, and they've gone up and down, but they followed the market.
Yeah.
Well, I would like to bring some industries in here that kind of absorb those dips. And I've been talking to businesses here in town. They're growing, and they're building out, and they have great jobs for young people to come back and take and get involved with. And I get so excited hearing that. Because I want people to be able to live here, make a living here, buy a home,
Yeah.
And not have to
Somewhere.
go, yeah, and
not
not
have
have
to
to
even
go
come here, 'cause-
somewhere.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's kind
Right.
of how our story, that's how we were able to be here anyways. I mean, my parents are originally from Fort Worth,
Okay.
and National Supply brought my father here.
My family too. My dad works at Dustin's house for the last 30 years.
That's
and
right.
That we came here for his job there. Those are really great priorities to tackle. honing in on the infrastructure, specifically transportation infrastructure of the town.
Sure.
One big thing that you hear all the time is about the streets of Gainesville. And, you know, absolutely not calling anything out, but most of the things outside of the historic district in Gainesville are the streets that people are talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Often the stark contrast there. You said that there was just a bond passed with a plan that's finished out Culberson and Broadway. What are some of your plans to continue that growth within that bond? Is there more plans for that? Do you have intentions to set forth more plans? Where's your thoughts on that?
Good question, and thank you for asking it. So, I've talked to a couple of council members since we've gone through this SUMP program. Sorry to use the acronym. It's Streets Utility Maintenance Program. And we're a representative form of government here in Gainesville. And we need to honor that, in my opinion. I'm going to just say that out loud. So in talking to a couple of our council members, after we reviewed that plan, they were going, but what we looked at that night, we didn't look at the entire plan because it's huge. I mean, it would take a week to go through every line on it. But we just pulled out like the big projects that we get the most bang for our buck, if you will. And we looked at 20 of them, I think. And some of the council members were like, well, there was nothing in my ward mentioned there. Yet my ward still has dilapidated streets as well. So I'll give you an example. And this is what we know as a council. And this is what I know as coming as mayor. And yes, I'm still running after I know this. But the biggest number on there was 28% of our streets are in poor condition. And y'all would probably go, yeah, well, duh. Well, in 10 years, per the plan, if we don't attack some of these, 38% of our streets will be in failed conditions. Now, I don't know what that term means, but here's what it means to me. It means we bring in a ripper and we rip up the entire street and we start all over again.
Yeah.
We just have to completely break it up and make it go over again. I don't think that's an acceptable way to look at the way we're going to do. So I think the way I'm going to do the lead through this program is we're going to sit down and we're going to look at the plans and we're going to see, is it better to bring a little bit to each one of our districts so that each representative gets a little bit of that? Or do we want to focus as a council holistically on the city and say, let's start here and move forward to do the best with what we can? Because, I've driven around the streets too, and I do just like y'all do, and I'm horrified at some of the streets. One is just right over here. I don't drive that unless I'm in my 4-wheel drive truck, and that's no reflection. Yes, exactly. Yeah, we have to focus on this infrastructure, but we have to figure out how to do it in a way that the citizens can afford it. I mean, I hate to say it that way, but we're all going to have to pitch in.
Yeah.
And do we do it through bond issues? Do we do it through, trying to cut back a little bit here and there and do it as we can with the tax revenue we have? That's the reason I'm so passionate about growing the tax base here. Because over the last 13 years, when you net it out, you look at the $50 million in growth that we've experienced here in Gainesville. Well, go to the corner of 82 and 35. Now, please tell me if I'm wrong. 5 years ago, would you have imagined that you would see what you see there?
Nope.
Not at all.
I went away for college in 2014 and came back, and I was like, what is this? I was like, Whataburgers move, all this. I was like, what is this? Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a Chick-fil-A, like what?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Burger King.
Yeah.
My
Right.
parents lived real close to there by the hospital.
Right.
So there was nothing on
Yeah.
that side of
Right.
We had to come into town literally
Yeah.
to
Right.
be able to go. And now
Yeah.
it's like, I go to my parents' house and I go to Burger King,
Exactly.
So it's
On the
right
way to
there.
their house.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And
So that's $50 million worth of money that's come back into the city, which has allowed us to lower the tax rates a little bit, which has also allowed us more funding to address these infrastructure needs.
Yeah.
So that's part of the vision I have for Gainesville, and that's the reason I'm passionate about that.
what are your thoughts on an additional over or underpass to circumvent the train? We just have the one overpass there.
Right.
And I know in my lifetime, this is something that's come up several times within
Right.
the city is, do we get an over underpass? What are your thoughts on that?
I like it. No.
Great. Signed, sealed, delivered, right?
You asked me what I thought about it. I'm sure that would be an incredibly expensive, venture for us. Obviously, California Street being a state highway, that wouldn't happen there.
Yeah.
It would have to be Broadway or Main. So in my business, I'm a data person. I study statistics. I study, data inputs that we get from safety things. I would be more than happy to look at the the data around that and see how feasible that is.
Yeah.
I know I live there a block and a half from the trains, and every day when I'm on a Zoom meeting, I get that, "Where are you?" In my house, actually on the other side from the train. I've heard complaints about noise, and there are strategies for that too, but that's a very expensive study and things that go with that. So
Yeah.
I like the idea. I'd be willing to look at it, but I'm not sure with
There's a lot more
million,
street issues to
Yeah.
tackle before then.
Yeah, exactly.
But even just pointing that out is, that's funny to me because, when living here and going through school and starting driving, that Gainesville just always had the train. It's just a
Right.
thing. And so even just the thought of like, oh, that's something that we could change. Oh, because in my mind, I'm just like,
Exactly.
that's just a part of Gainesville. Gainesville has a train.
Mhm.
So it's kind of good. It's exciting to hear those wheels turning is where someone is like, oh, there is something that we can do about that. I'm like, oh, because in my mind, I didn't even think about that because the Gainesville train is like just a part of Gainesville.
One more thing on the transportation infrastructure, in our world, things are moving towards green transport. Green. How do we help the planet more, which is wonderful. Are there any thoughts on, implementing bike lanes or an infrastructure for something that is more green around streets or around Gainesville?
I'm glad you brought that up. So we just did that with this study. We're looking at a sidewalk from, roughly it would be from where Lowe's is all the way out to the high school.
Yes.
And we've applied for a grant through the state to help with that effort. And it's not really a sidewalk. It's like a lane. It would be and it's for walking and it's for biking, things like that. But it would be connecting downtown to the college, to the high school.
That's awesome.
To Black Hill Farms, to any of those businesses and things that are out in that direction.
Allows for expansion.
Right.
In that direction.
That's about a $1 million investment. But there's also a desire to expand our sidewalk infrastructure within town, excuse me, to connect our schools to downtown.
Yeah.
So that's a long-range plan, and we are working on that. And on council the other night, we did approve the plan for the one going out to the high school.
That's awesome.
So yes, I love that idea, and we're definitely looking to expand more than what we have with our Rails to Trails, which is the Homegrown Heroes walking trail. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So we're going to move on to kind of financial stability and economic development. You did touch on that as well. You touched on increasing the tax base to kind of bring in more revenue for the town. How do you plan on doing that?
Just to go ahead and talk about things that are going on.
Yeah.
I mean, Black Hill Farms out there, they either have built or are really close to having 40 homes completed out there. When that is built out, there will be, he's touching all markets. There's going to be an apartment complex out there. There's going to be a senior living facility, not a facility, but there'll be like duplexes for age restrictions on that. Giving, people my age and older a place they don't have to mow a lawn or,
Right.
Some of the homes that they're starting to build out there, they have like green spaces between them. So when you walk out your front door, you're looking at somebody else's front porch where there's green space where you can, allow your children to play or dogs or whatever to run. But they're going to have like, I think he said 680 places for people to live.
That's awesome.
Oh, wow.
We just approved Chalmers Estates. They're going to expand 105 lots out there. And I know that there are other builders here very strongly looking at building in that area where Chalmers is more so than that.
Yeah.
So there's homes coming to our community. Them working on industry to move here because we have a 126 acre business park on the north side of town that doesn't have a business in it. we need to get some businesses in there. We need to figure out how to do that. I've already spoken to Audrey, our Gainesville Economic Development Corp director, and she's telling me some strategies that we could work on to get that business park populated. I mean, it's really important that we do that too, because we invested in that to make it something that would benefit Gainesville.
How do we achieve, more business diversity? Our downtown area has really boomed within the last several years.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about that 8235 junction that's really started to boom.
Right.
And now those two places are kind of converging. You talk about the business park on the north side of town. Is that around the old mall?
Yes, it's right behind the old mall. If you know where Hampton is, Hampton is just west of there.
And so, there's kind of all of these puzzle pieces that are connecting together. That it's like, how do we diversify the business within the town? Do you have any plans to, rezone anything as far as our zoning maps go? What are some of your ideas there about how we do bring, diversity of business owners, diversity of types of business? How do we achieve that?
I'm just going to be really straight with you. I don't have the answers on how we attract those businesses here, but I'll tell you this. Like Chick-fil-A, we don't fit their marketing strategy until we showed them the traffic at that intersection. Yeah. Then they said, oh, now we're interested. So we've got to figure out how to sell ourselves. I mean, that's the part that I don't want to say that we're missing, but that's what I'm going to work on as the mayor, is how do we sell our community? What's tough right now is you drive through town and you see help wanted signs everywhere. So, it could be that the only having 22 houses in town for sale and people standing in line to buy those. That could be one thing. So it could be a place to live. But in terms of attracting business here, we have a hospital. We have NCTC. That is, oh my gosh. I just get chills thinking about them because of they're so unique. They're so creative. Not only are they just looking for college, ready people, they're looking for people that want to enter the services industry or something like that. And they can teach them all the way to where they can take their license and become certified and work in industry. And then I also know that, they work with industry here locally to help provide training and resources for staff. So that alone, to me, is a selling point to a company looking to move here and do something.
NCTC definitely is a hidden gem.
It is.
And there are things like, we're just so fortunate to have things like the Small Business Development Center that is there that helps those small businesses. And so, maybe those are some of the discussions that need to be had, how much more the community or the city can work with something like the Small Business Development Center to help diversify and then help create more things and to make things more attractive and bring more businesses in. How can we use what we have to work together to build that? Also, a thing is, I know it's an ongoing thing that I speak with on a business end, because I too, on a personal note, I struggle between business and education, like where I fit in and what my passion is between the two, and it's kind of a little bit of both. A personal experience that I had, it was coming back to Gainesville, working or living further south. I had the opportunity of coming here and was looking for employment here. But when I came, unfortunately, at the time, the things that I was offered just wasn't what could sustain my family. Sure. And so some of those things, it's like, how can we bring on, there were help wanted signs and I applied for those signs, for those jobs, but the offers that I got wouldn't really feed my family either. And so what can we do to help that increase that? I know it's not just, let's just pay more, because they don't have enough to pay more. Right. So it's, like those little things, those steps that we can make for, to be able to offer things, but to be able to offer them in a means where they want to stay and can come. And so, and part of the reason why I had to go there is because that is where the salary was. Because
and making sure people are working in places that they're passionate about.
Yes.
But what things that can sustain them, and how do we work together as a community to, combine all these resources?
She's exactly right. and I'm going to go back in ancient history here because she brought it up earlier. Annjeanette, sorry. So our parents both worked at National Supply when we were young, and y'all wouldn't remember this, but that was the crown jewel of Gainesville. I mean, if you got a job at in Gainesville at the National Supply, you lived in a new house, you drove 2 new cars, you had even a bass boat or something. I mean, go back to that time and day. But you were living very well, and you had a retirement, and you had time off, and you had plenty of money to do whatever you wanted. Well, in the mid 80s, when the oil field crashed and things turned south for us, that closed. And we went from being a thriving economy here in Gainesville, where people were proud to live and own homes, to a bedroom community.
Now, what do you mean by bedroom community?
Well, people had to leave town to go find a job. There was no jobs here to work.
Gotcha.
So most of the people went to Peterbilt.
Gotcha.
So they live here and they shop here, but
Okay, I see
they
what you mean.
go make their money down there.
Yeah.
At Peterbilt, which wouldn't it be cool if Peterbilt was here? You
Yeah.
know, then we would again have another economy for or more adding to our economy for our citizens.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing I would like to have here. And we have resources here to help. We have plenty of land, around to help build. We have a great airport here that provides plenty of access to any place you want to go in the United States. I mean, we don't have any commercial flights, but the resources here for any corporations that need it. So, we have all the infrastructure here to be a place where a company would want to move. I mean, even our proximity to Dallas-Fort Worth, we're within 60 minutes of the Metroplex. And a lot of the industries I hear that are looking to, set up shop, that's one of their things, is being within 60 miles of a major airport. So we're 45, I think, from Dallas-Fort Worth.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to do, and there's a lot to work towards, and I want to do that as mayor. I'm not just gonna hope somebody calls, sit and look at my watch all day and go, man, the phone just never rings. I'm gonna work for that.
Yeah.
So
good.
But good point though.
So now moving on to some past votes.
Okay.
In your 5 years as city council member, we've been looking back at the voting records and things. Most things have been voted on unanimously, either yay or nay, with all council members.
Right.
How do you work with your other council members, and how do you plan to work as mayor to make sure that it's not just the 8 council members, seven council members that are deciding. How that it's not just the council members, and y'all are representing each and every one of the constituents. How do you work together, and how do you plan to work together in a potentially different role as mayor?
Sure. I appreciate you asking that. The way I currently run my board is I'm very communicative with them. I'm very open with them. I feel like my role is to, as a leader, is to facilitate. I usually leave my vote or opinion to the last when it comes to that, and if I have to cast the vote that goes one way or the other, that's usually the hardest thing I do because I think I have to be neutral in that role as a leader, and not because I don't have an opinion, and not because I'm not representing everyone. But I think it's very important that the council members that represent their wards have their say.
Yeah.
And I know for me, as moving forward as the mayor, I will definitely be in communication with the council members, especially in things that affect their wards. I wouldn't allow, I wouldn't go into Mary Jo's ward and vote on, pull a vote up and say, hey, you voted on it or something. I mean, I would make sure that she knew in advance, or that we had a conversation about that. I was looking at the rules today on how that works, and I don't want to, incriminate myself on anything, because you can't have a rolling meeting or something like that. You can't go, Izzy, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? And then we all walk in the room and vote. You just can't do that. It's not fair and it's not right. And you wouldn't want representation like that.
Right.
Right.
And I'll be honest with you, the council members that we have are very strong. I'm very proud of the work that they do, and so I trust their judgment when we show up to have that vote. So, but I will communicate with them as best I can in the confines of the law.
So, kind of the biggest vote that's happened on your time within City Council, and definitely one of the hottest topics within Gainesville over the last year, is the vote to remove the Confederate statue in Leonard Park.
Yep.
Again, one that was voted unanimously to be taken down in July of 2020. It was a monumental decision for, pun intended, well, actually not intended, but it was there.
It's your show, man. It's your show.
But would you mind talking about, that decision that was definitely something that divided a lot of the town?
So this is where leadership is tough. This is very hard. And I'm just going to say this to you guys. You ought to be proud of your city council because they took their job seriously.
Yeah.
This was not, a Tommy vote or a Mary Jo or Kenny vote. This was a council vote. This was a representing you, the voters, the people that live here inside this 18 square miles that we call home. And so what we did, and I think I can't say this enough, we had the open forums. We brought people in and we invited everyone. We wanted to hear from everyone. We didn't care who you were. We wanted you to live here. We wanted you to love being here. But we want to hear what you had to say. And so as we met in those meetings, I sat and I listened. And I was really proud of everyone that stood up and talked. Everyone, no matter what side you're on. Took a lot of courage for a lot of people. And one of the deals I was talking to someone, it was someone of color, and I sat down with them and I asked them, I said, why now? And he said, somebody listened to us. We felt safe enough that somebody would listen to us. I can't tell you the burden that fell on my shoulders at that moment. As a voting member of that council, I'm sorry, that they just trusted me with their vote. They just trusted me with however many years of hard feelings over that monument. So after we went and we listened to all the people that wanted to have a say in this, we sat down individually and we read. We looked at the history of those monuments and what they meant and why they were placed there. Now, people sit and argue, well, that's historic. Okay, then let's put history where it belongs. Let's move it to a museum. The people that said they're offensive, they said, look, we don't want to destroy them. We want to put them in a place where they can be viewed appropriately, but not so that I have to look at them. And I get that because where that monument currently is in the city park, it's a public place that you, the taxpayers, paid for. And you want to take your children and your loved ones down there and enjoy our zoo and enjoy a picnic and enjoy the playground. And that should be a place that everyone can go and not be offended or have to explain why that is there. And so this council took all of that information and we decided to move that monument. And I'm very proud of this council for doing that.
Yeah.
And we did not destroy it. We did not sell it. We did not move it to a different part of the state or the part of the world.
And that's something that goes into that listening that we were talking about earlier, that active, mindful listening.
Right.
And this leads me to kind of the next talking point is the perceptions around historically marginalized communities. Oftentimes within our community, and I speak from my own experience, I think about growing up, one of the reasons that I went to college 9 hours away was because I didn't feel like I had a place here,
sure,
or that I could belong here. And, a lot of historically marginalized communities, meaning people of color, LGBTQ plus people, religious minorities, we feel like we don't have a voice. That's where things like LTST have come about. That's where things like the protests that were happening last summer came about to raise awareness and give that voice to people. How do you plan to move forward with letting all people know, this is a place where everyone can belong?
I've been with the federal government since 1987 in some capacity. And, I took an oath of office to protect the Constitution of the United States and protect those who live here. That meant something to me. I mean, those words.
Okay.
I'm not a partisan person at all. I don't lean right. I don't lean left. I don't, I'm not. I just don't embrace those terms. In my work, we are trained every year on dealing, with our thoughts and our anything that would cause someone to feel like we had an agenda of any sort. We just don't talk about those things. I mean, you can't say off-color jokes or anything like that. You know what I mean? I'm just getting to a point that we embrace everyone, and you look at people because of who they are, and that's the reason I said when we started this, I start right here.
Yeah.
I don't look at anything else. So, and I think you can go back and look at my experience over the last 30 years in this community. I don't have anything that puts me in a on one side or the other, or shows that I have any kind of extreme views on anything with our community. So for me as a leader, I embrace everybody. I want everybody to come to the table and have a seat, and I mean that quite literally. I don't look at color or any other marker that identifies a person differently from another person. I want you all to be there, and that's the reason I feel like, in my capacity as mayor, I want to talk to Austin. I want to talk to Gionna. They're people that I respect in this community, that love this community just as much as I do. And I want to be available to Annjeanette when she wants to talk about things going on at the park or in the city.
Yeah.
I want to be your mayor. I don't want to be the mayor. I want to be your mayor.
Yeah.
And I want you to be able to say that. And I mean that because, so many times people get wrapped up in a title or or a label, and I'm just not that guy.
Yeah.
I love being out in the public. I love the people that live here, and being your mayor to represent you, to lead the city council for better things for this community that impacts all of us is what I really want to do.
I think there's a lot of times when especially in the last year with the Confederate statue, with the protests that have been going on, a lot of it is people just simply not knowing, or not being willing to know another person's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's a lot of that's true from all sides across the board. There's just people that are like failing to have that empathy of this is a person that has a differing perspective, and they're allowed to have that differing perspective as long as it doesn't impede on another person's life, and impede on their own well-being. And I think that's the key thing that people often forget. How do we create these? You've created LTST. Mr. Moore, you've done so much to be active in the community. Annjeanette, you've have been a strong voice on LTST and within this community and within the education of this community. And the through line through this whole conversation has been education, upfront education to mitigate some of those issues or things that could arise. What are y'all's perspectives on continuing that conversation and continuing reaching a mindful, empathetic point in a mindful, empathetic community?
I think people have to want to have the conversation first. Like, we can't make someone want to come to the table. So I think as long as we're, giving someone the platform to do so, then we can create these healthy conversations. But we can't force them to come to our events. We can't force them to want to sit down. So I feel like that's the first thing, is for someone to be like, I do need to learn something. I do need to educate myself. Help me. Give me the chance. Give me the platform to do so.
Yeah.
So I think it's just important for people to look at themselves and be like, well, how can I better my understanding of the situation?
I also think there's just the presence. Having a presence is the big thing. We talked about that before. It's just showing presence, because I noticed that I've heard, you hear a lot of people that say something like, well, they don't listen to me, or they don't, or it doesn't matter what I say, it doesn't matter what I do, nothing's going to change because that's how it always is. Presence is a lot because you can slowly start to tear down those views and those opinions once you have a presence and show a genuine concern. And have a sincere concern. Like when you gave that story, that gave me chills, because that is exactly how so many people feel. Is like we have never been heard. Once we have a presence, once we start building trust, that's it. It's like presence and trust and want and will. I think slowly but surely we can make some of those changes.
Yeah, I agree, and you're right about opening the conversation and having the talks. But being present to hear those conversations and be willing to change. And I think that takes trust on both sides, in all sincerity. Do y'all know Miss Mary Hunter?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I served on school board with her, and I love that woman. I love her to pieces. And she'd come in and she'd look at me and she goes, "So, what are you doing on Monday?" I go, "Well, I'm off. It's Martin Luther King birthday." She goes, "Good. You're going with me." I go, "Oh, yeah, sure. I'm going with you." And so I went with her through my tenure with her, and I enjoyed my time with her. And I really respect her because she has a perspective I don't have. And that's where I'm at in my life right now. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know what it's like to be Gionna Scott. I really don't. I don't know what it's like to be you, Annjeanette. I don't know what it's like to be you, Austin. I want to know from your perspective. I genuinely want to hear, because that's how we break down these barriers. That's how we get to the next level of healing in our community and moving forward together. If we don't talk about that like you're doing, thank you, then we can't fix it.
If we cross over and not be so afraid to join committees, like if I'm sure people are like, "Oh, well, I'm white, so I can't be on the MLK committee." It's like that's not how you should look at it. You should just see a need and go there.
Yeah.
So if we cross boundaries and so that, like you said, there's a presence at each of them, I think that would make all the difference.
And we're just helping each other out
Right,
and
right.
truly uniting the community. There's a certain amount of transparency
Yeah.
with the mayoral office, with anything that's going on in the city that needs to be had in order for people to have the best understanding.
And you want to see those things in the community, because you have those questions like, well, why does this program have this and then that program has that? And it may not be because one prefers one over the other, or one, there could be a number of things. And so we need those questions answered and just those things brought out that, this parade may not be as big as this parade because of this. It may not be even a mindful thing. It may not even, some people may not even have thought about anything like that. So yes, those conversations are what can drive that to balance out some of those things.
And so, talking of that, and I know exactly what you're talking about, like on the parades and things. A lot of times it is the community involvement. It is. I'm just share this real quick. So the Medal of Honor Host City program this year. I'll try to get through this. I don't know if have y'all ever heard of Melvin Morris? Melvin Morris, he's a Medal of Honor recipient. He invited me to his house, and I've actually stayed at his house. He's such a cool guy. Well, actually, his wife invited us to stay at his house, but that's a different story. I don't think he cared. But when you walk in the front door of Melvin Morris's house, you come through the foyer, and right here on the left is a picture of him getting his medal from President Obama. I stood there and looked at that and wept, because I can't imagine the pride in him to get that medal, our nation's highest military honor, from the first black president of the United States. He waited 50 years to get it.
Wow.
I can't imagine the pride that welled up in his heart when he got that. And so we went, my committee, and we reached out to the Martin Luther King committee and asked if we could bring him here. We hope to have Melvin Morris here this next year to help bring our community together, because he is iconic not only to America, but in so many ways.
Yeah.
And it made me proud to be representative of a program and reach out to another program in our town and start building those bridges.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Is there anything else that we want to talk about before we go ahead and shut it off?
Okay, there's something on my heart.
Yeah, go for it.
I hope, my wish for Gainesville is for more Black-owned businesses to be here. And I feel like it's important for them to feel comfortable being here, for them to want to come here. So, however, I don't know if LTST helps, can make that happen, or make them know that, like, we're thinking of them and, like, we do want them to come. That's just something that I would like to see happen when we're talking about different industries and such. Because I honestly don't know of any that are like downtown in the historic area, or any restaurants or anything owned by any Black people.
Okay. Now, I don't. I'm completely embarrassed. So I think you were sharing with me a little bit about where the BP Douglas Park is, and there used to be a thriving
Mm-hmm.
business area. And is there a lot on that? I mean, is there anything documented on that where a person could read up on that?
So Letitia Hendricks has been doing a lot of reading about that and kind of trying to compile that history. It's one of the things about Gainesville, and also to kind of piggyback on your point, I can also say, like, I would love to see more thriving LGBTQ plus business and things for the LGBTQ plus community, to make it there are things, when you make it safe for all people, it saves lives.
Yep.
Period. I mean, like, there's the suicide rates among young adults that are LGBTQ plus or people of color in minority areas is staggering. How do we bolster all of these marginalized communities to make sure that they have a place here? I would love to see more of that, because it's oftentimes, Gionna took the burden upon herself to create LTST, to bring that voice to the forefront. I have moved back and I live out in Proud, and it's oftentimes, it feels like the burden is on the minority shoulders to bring that representation out. And same thing with the BP Douglas project. Letitia's doing a lot of research, but a lot of it is also word of mouth of, this is what it was like from people, because there's not a lot written out about it.
Yeah.
Which is one of those things about this topic that I'm like, why isn't there more written about this? Why isn't there more written about BP Douglas? Why isn't there more written about the Black contribution to the town?
Sure.
Is something that it's like, there was this thriving area, there was Booker T. Washington, there was this whole aspect. And I mean, we could talk about the ideas of, desegregation happening and it being a avenue that
changed the dynamics of our community, because
it did.
I mean, now commerce, where it was going on in certain parts of town. I mean, I don't know if you know where the new oh, good grief, it's over on Harvey Street. Anyway, there used to be 2 small grocery stores right there down around the corner from where the Catholic Church is. Those were community grocery stores. I saw advertising for them in the early 70s the other day. I remember going in the stores even. But you're right. So there's not a lot of history about that. So the commerce in town went from being in little parts and pockets of town to, okay, now we can all go to the same areas and shop. So, so it hurt a lot of businesses that thrived on neighborhood, involvement. Yeah. So.
And I mean, they're doing, like, the town, we are doing a lot of things. There's the Fiesta Night that's coming up on May 8th. There's those types of things that I'm like, we can do a lot better to bolster the culture in our community and truly embrace the diversity of those. That's where, in my opinion, it comes in handy to embrace those labels. And it comes in handy to be like, no, I can't separate myself from me being a queer man. Like, I can't separate that from myself because it's part of who I am. No different than I'm like, you can't separate the fact that you have a loving wife and a family, and that's part of your sexual orientation. I mean, it's much more. That's where that implicit bias comes in, where I'm like, people don't realize that me being gay or me being queer is not just about who I'm sleeping with. Like, it is your life, you know.
Right, right.
You like
Yeah.
you being a Black woman is not just about you know, the way you wear your hair, attitude, those things that are like,
Attitude.
oh, this is the way, those implicit biases of like, you're a Black woman, this is how you're supposed to talk, how you're
Right.
supposed to wear your hair, how you're supposed to conduct yourself. And it's like, that's not, we don't need to fall into that aspect of labels, but we do need to embrace, you know, you are a professional Black woman, you're a professional Black woman that are thriving and successful in your lives. We embrace that. Now, how do we bring that more of that in?
Right.
Because the world's big enough. Gainesville's big enough to have a booming, diverse economy and booming, diverse business owners.
Yeah. And I said there wasn't a Black owner, but now that I think about it, there's Jordan Hubbard.
Yeah.
He's,
his barbershop.
so yeah. And I think
And then
he's
there's
one
Jazz's Barbecue. I mean, there are places, but it's like, how do we let it be known that there's more comfort in and
like
more,
it's okay to come and build here,
and it's acceptable.
Yeah.
So, and this is for my edification. Is it not? It's not. Okay. I'm listening.
I don't think that they think that it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because what do they have to look at? You know, like 2 businesses here that are owned by Black owners. If I saw that, I'd be like, well, okay, there's 2 compared to how many?
Just initially, just how is that available to get started up? Because if I need help getting that business, am I going to be able to get the help? Because if I don't see any other business owners of color, does that mean that I'm not going to be able to get a loan, or can I not? You know, and then historically, I mean, stereotypically, even our banking and our financial systems and everything don't seem to cater, you know, they don't seem to cater to minorities either. So it's like, I don't even know how to go through that process. Are there any programs? And, you know,
Is there support?
Yeah, is there support or resources for us? And because if I don't see it, then I'm maybe under the assumption that it's not available.
Right.
So, and just starting up the business, and is the business going to be thriving? And, you know,
Are
the
people
risks.
going to come to me?
Are people going to come? And when they can, if it's me or them, are they going to choose me because, or are they going to not choose me because of me? Yeah.
I understand.
And to me, I'm like, it's, you know, I didn't know that we did a Juneteenth celebration every year. I didn't know that until last year.
Right.
And I grew up here.
Right.
And so there's aspects of that it's like, how do we get the city involved in some of these things and get more community involvement, but also more backing from the city government to be like, yes, let's have this town celebration. This isn't just for the Black community. This is celebrating a part of our American history.
Right.
So let's celebrate it. You know what I mean? There's aspects of that it's like, it's really cool to relate it back to the LGBTQ plus community. There's I guarantee not many people here know of the Stonewall riots or know why there is what Pride Month is and the historical aspects of it. And so I'm like, there's all of these things that I'm like, we should be embracing that because it would be just as absurd to say there's not Black people living in town, to say that there's not LGBTQ plus people living in town, or to say that we don't have the diversity. You know, that's a thing that I've personally heard a lot in the last year. It's like, well, if they're here, they need to speak up. And I'm like, well, we can make it a little bit easier for people to speak up. Yeah. And make it like, how do we embrace that diversity and embrace that to be explicit about we all belong here. We all have the right to be here. And we all have the right to exist here. You know, and we're 4 people that born and raised here that have 4 very different perspectives, and we all have the right to exist here. And so how do we make that appealing to outsiders and bring them here, or even to children that grew up here that have gone away and left? How do we make it appealing for them to come back and know you have a place here?
And there's growth here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I get it. Yeah, and I'm very open into listening and having conversations about how we promote and grow in those areas, because definitely we need to, without a doubt. I mean, and I'm excited about getting more involved with things in the community, even though I feel like I'm really involved. But there are parts of the community I want to allow I've not been really involved in, and I know I need to do a better job in that. And if you'll let me, your mayor, I'm going to. I promise. So.